Hey y'all, welcome back to my kitchen. So today we are actually going to be making an oatmeal bar, but we are going to be using American persimmons. Now you can buy the Japanese persimmons in the grocery store, but we have a lot of American persimmon trees around us. And Will and I actually made this oatmeal persimmon bar last year, and I really loved it. And I figured, you know what, why not show you guys how to make it here on the channel. The inspiration came from Tyrant Farms. They are another homestead here in this part of South Carolina. You can use the Japanese persimmons from the grocery store in this recipe. They are just bigger and they typically are a little bit harder and denser. I read that to get them softer, so that way you can use them in this recipe, if you put them in the freezer overnight and then take them out in the morning and let them thaw, they'll be a little softer that way. Essentially what we're doing, we're making a pulp from the American persimmons that we wild harvested here, and we're gonna get the seeds separated. I'll show you how to do that. We're gonna pretty much put it in between two oatmeal layers, so then you have a really lovely oatmeal bar. We did this last year, like I said, and we topped it with some whipped cream that we just whipped up ourselves from heavy whipping cream, and sweetened it with maple syrup and just a little dash of cinnamon. If you're into the warming spices like I am, especially this time of year, I think that you'll like this very much. So let's get started. So I'll show you what the American persimmons look like. We have found that if you let them sit for a couple of days, they soften nicely and they get a little bit sweeter. So if you are wild foraging American persimmons to make this dessert, I would definitely give them a couple of days for them to soften, and it makes it easier separating the pulp. But yeah, so like these guys, some of these are softer than others, and we'll be using them. I may not quite have enough persimmons to make this, but we'll make do with what we got. So what I'm gonna do to get this pulp separated from the persimmons, I'm literally just gonna take a solo cup. I'm gonna pop these persimmons into a colander like I've done right here. And then I am just gonna take them and mash them. I've got a bowl under here to separate. I'm just gonna mash them into this colander and just move them around. So you can see what I'm doing. And it'll get their pulp separated. Now bear in mind, it's gonna take a lot more American persimmons than the Japanese persimmons that you can buy from the store to make this snack. So you kind of want to make sure that you can get a lot of American persimmons before you try and make this. So just kind of keep that in mind. I don't think I actually told you why you want to do this to separate the pulp. The American persimmon seeds are very big, whereas the Japanese persimmons don't have any seeds at all. So this is the easiest way of getting that pulp separated, so that way you don't have to worry about the seeds. Now, I did learn that you can make a hot beverage from the roasted and ground up persimmon seeds, which I think I'll save that for another video later, because I'm very interested in that, and I've never done that. I love hot teas, I love hot beverages, so hang out with me and we'll see what we can do with these American persimmon seeds on a later video. So this is what I was left with after pressing them through the colander to separate the seeds. And you can see there's actually still a good bit of pulp that we could use for our recipes. I've started putting them through
this finer mesh strainer, which I realized I should grab my camera and show you guys what I'm doing, or at least tell you. And I'm able to get a little bit more, so I'm going to carry on doing that and get the rest of my pulp separated, and we'll start the rest of the other processes. So I keep getting ahead of myself and forgetting that I should record things. You can tell I'm still new being a YouTuber. But so far in my bowl, I have about a cup of einkorn wheat flour and 2 cups of old-fashioned rolled oats. Now in the recipe that I got from Tyrant Farms, which I will link below in the description so that way you can find it, but I'll go ahead and just add the rest of everything else. So I needed about 2 cups of the persimmon pulp, and I ended up getting just under 2 cups. I didn't do this last year when I made it. I'm going to add 2 eggs instead of 1 egg to the persimmon pulp just to bulk it up a little bit more. The egg will probably make it a little bit more gelatinous, but I don't really care. I think it'll still taste good all the same. But you know, that's kind of what I want to inspire on this channel, is do your own thing in the kitchen. Don't feel like you have to be shackled to what a recipe says. It's your kitchen, it's your food that you're consuming, and you may very well find that you're adding to the recipe and making it better. So what I ended up with in my bowl was baking powder, baking soda, the rolled oats, and the einkorn wheat flour that I mentioned earlier. Pink Himalayan salt, I did about 3 pinches, and my spices were cloves, cardamom, ginger, and cinnamon. Now this recipe does call for pastry flour and then some sort of nut flour. They used pecan flour. I don't have either. I don't have any nut flour, and I always use einkorn wheat flour. It's the Jovial brand. Last year when I made these oatmeal persimmon bars, I used the einkorn wheat in lieu of the pastry flour. I did use the almond flour last year and it was still good, but this year I'm just subbing in and using all einkorn flour instead of the pastry flour and the nut flour. So in another bowl, I have combined a whole stick of butter, which is about a half a cup of butter, which is what the recipe calls for. And it calls for half a cup of Muscovado sugar. I've never even heard of that, and I'm not sure what that is. I've never used it. So I just combined coconut sugar and raw turbinado sugar because I actually really love that flavor, and I do that mixture for a lot of different baking recipes that I do. So I'm going to take this and get it mixed up in the electric mixer, get it nice and fluffy. And from here, now that I've got my mixture all beaten up, I'm going to slowly add my oatmeal flour mixture that I've mixed up into it and slowly add a little at a time as I incorporate it and mix it together. Okay, so I'm now about to mix together my pulp, lemon juice, maple syrup, and then we'll have our nice thick persimmon pulp. Yes, baby, we will. Got a little shell in there, whoopsie daisies. Got another little bit of shell in there, whoopsie daisies times 2. And now from here, I am going to mix and incorporate it. And I'm curious what will happen if I put a little bit of butter in the persimmon pulp mix. I mean, obviously, butter is like the holy grail of any recipe, so it can't be bad. So what I'm gonna do after this, now that I've got everything added, I've put adding about this much butter, not too much. I'm just making or getting the bottoms and side of this baking dish grease so that way nothing sticks and maybe adds a little extra flavor in the process. Who knows? Now I'm about to take my oatmeal mix that has the wet mixture of the butter and the eggs and the sugar. And I'm going to lay it down in a little bit, half of that, in my greased pan. And then I'm gonna add our persimmon pulp mixture on top of that. And then I'm gonna add the second half of the oatmeal mixture on top to cap it off. Well, as you can see, it is not as evenly distributed over the top of it as it was on the bottom. That could definitely have been my fault and just not evenly cutting it in half. When I made it last year, I don't remember this happening. So I'm going to still bake it anyway and see what happens. I'm hoping that the persimmon pulp doesn't burn or scorch. So we'll bake it. I have the oven set to 350 degrees. I think I'll go ahead and turn it down, maybe 325, just so that way I, again, don't run the risk of burning my pulp while it is baking. And I'm gonna set my timer. The recipe calls for 35 to 45 minutes. Since I'm turning my oven down, I probably want it to be maybe about 45 minutes anyways, because it's gonna take a little bit longer to bake. So I'm setting my timer. So I was talking about Tyrant Farms earlier. They were the ones that gave me the inspiration for this recipe. And I've tweaked things a little bit here and there, but for the most part it's the same. So because my recipe is a touch different, I'm going to link the recipe that I did today for this vlog down in the description below, along with the link to Tyrant Farms' recipe. 45 minutes later. Looking good and not scorched, which I am most pleased about. Oh yes. Now we're gonna let it cool a little bit, and then I'll be back with the verdict of its taste and yeah, all the other good things. Oh shit. Did I not get any of that? God dang it.
Huh?
I thought I was recording when I poured in the heavy cream.
Oh. Excuse me, little kitty. I was gonna sit there. I reckon not.
All right. Testing the product.
You give me a fork.
Does it bother you?
I look like a psychopath. A spoon. Alright, let's go.
I'm waiting. Cheers.
Cheers. Mmm. That's good.
Good. Some things I'm already noticing that I could have done better or shouldn't have done at all. Earlier I'd mentioned I was going to do 2 eggs for the persimmon pulp, and I should have just kept it to the 1. It really wasn't that much off. I think I had 1.5 cups or maybe 1.75 cups, but it made it really eggy, almost like custardy and fluffy, which is not quite what the recipe is going for.
I like it.
It's not what we had last year either. I'm glad that you're enjoying it, but I think it could be improved upon.
I like it better than last year's.
But you know what, again, this is what cooking's all about. We do it, you think you mess up, it's a success. Or you think you mess up and you mess up. Anyway.
This is a success.
Well, cool. I'm glad that you enjoy it. The whipped cream I did, I'm such a goofy. I thought I had started the video recording and I was adding the whipped cream. I did the maple syrup, cinnamon, vanilla would have been good. And then I whipped it up and I realized that I wasn't even recording. So that's what this is. We did a little dollop of whipped cream on each of ours. Nothing special, nothing perfectly shaped. We just plopped it on there. Anyway, go try it. See if you can get you some American persimmons. This is typically when they are ready for harvest, when they're orange, they grow, and they're green when they're not ripe, right? But
they'll fall to the ground.
Yeah,
they'll fall to the ground, but they're not always quite ripe right when they fall to the ground. You really need to let them sit inside for like 1 day or 2 days until they shrivel just a little bit. When they start turning like a black color, they'll get a rotten taste. So, and it's a fine line between where they go from being ultra sweet and rotten. So, but yeah, don't eat them. I don't eat them directly off the ground unless it's after the frost. After the frost, sometimes they're sweet as soon as they hit the ground. But before the frost, yeah, let them sit inside for a day. And some trees are going to be, the persimmons are going to be astringent before the frost every time. And it's some sort of genetic thing between the trees. Some of them are, is the word astringent? Bitter. They make your mouth turn inside out.
Yeah, astringent.
When you bite into an unripe persimmon. And some trees keep that property until after, not until after it freezes. It has to freeze before the fruit loses that property. But some trees, as in the fruit we're eating right now, it has not froze at all. It's not even close, actually. This is actually really early to be getting persimmons. the persimmons here on our property aren't even close to being ripe. These came from Jess from Roots and Refuge. Just came from her tree, and they're already ripe. So they're sweet. So just make sure you try a couple before you cook with them, because you don't want the bitter stuff going, or the rotten ones for that matter too. So
and there you have it, guys. Tasty. You can eat this as dessert. You could eat it as a snack, whatever. But I think it's delicious. And that's it. Thank y'all for hanging out with us. Ta-ta.